Good morning. Welcome in Lanchee in this conference organized by Meta and Media Literacy Coalition. It's dedicated to the content moderation and conversation with Meta. We have representatives of the company with focus on disinformation. In 60 minutes, Meta Central and Eastern European Public Policy Director Jacob Turovski, Maria Yurukova, lecturer at Sofia University and expert in disinformation and media regulation. Dr. Nikola Tulechki, knowledge engineer and data analyst, consultant to Factcheck Bulgaria, and representative of the US Embassy is Peter Vanderwall, information officer. We will talk on different aspects of content moderation and challenges put in the Bulgarian context. In the second half of the event, the panelists will take questions from you, from the audience, composed mainly of experts in the field or members of civil society organizations. Let's start with some general question to all of you. What is the biggest challenge to the moderation of content created and distributed on a global scale on centralized platforms for any of you from your personal expertise, field of expertise? What is the big challenge? Maria, probably you.
Okay, great. Thank you for the question. I do believe that it's important to mention that when you're speaking about moderation, we should mention that the moderation is different in different countries, especially when we're speaking about Bulgaria. We are under the European framework, and this is really important. I do believe that in Bulgaria we don't speak a lot about moderation, and we have a lot to catch up. The things that for me it's really important is to mention that the moderation in Bulgarian language is something specific that we probably should talk more about. Basically this is one of the things that I think it will be really interesting to communicate what the big platforms are doing for moderation, specifically in Bulgaria. So yeah.
Thank you. Peter.
So I think for me, the challenge in moderation for big platforms, big social media platforms is like you said, they have to take into account the local context in the hundreds of countries in which they operate. And so that, coupled with the challenges of moderating in dozens of different languages, in a boutique language like Bulgarian, specific to one country, has posed challenges, I know, for Facebook and for the other platforms that are not quite as popular here.
Jacob.
All right. So first of all, thank you very much for having us today. We're super I was saying that it's maybe one of the first conferences that we have the opportunity to do post-COVID. So we're very happy to be in Sofia and on such an important topic, and starting with a kind of huge question, really. I would say it's the complexity comes from a mix of the scale, because the amount of content is really massive. So scale is one challenge, and the other challenge is the complexity of what we're talking about. As moderation, and I guess we will develop further on, it's kind of not the same when you're talking about illegal content, when you're talking about misinformation, disinformation, harmful content. And really the approach to all these kind of contents is and should be totally different. But sometimes you have kind of gray areas, which makes it complex. That being said, and I will already kind of answer one of the questions that have been raised here. We often have this feedback that, okay, guys, maybe your moderations are good in English or French, but in smaller languages, it's not necessarily the case. Well, let me put it very clearly that we do have audits, regular audits about our enforcement, including about whether the different languages are treated the same way, and the reality is that it is treated the same way. And we do have all around the globe 15,000 content moderators, including Bulgarian content moderators, that do have the cultural knowledge, background, and of course the language to allow them to moderate the content. Then of course it's not only about moderators, it's also about AI. That is increasingly important in the way we moderate content, and this is really a big difference with time. But yeah, I already wanted to kind of put it on the table that it is our intention, and it is confirmed with all the work that we do, that the quality of moderation is not different between one language to another.
Thank you for this answer, Nikola.
Yes, thank you for the question. For me, one of the biggest challenges, and Jakub kind of hinted on it, is the questions of scale. So how do the local, very, very small scale phenomena like individual posts and individual behavior affect the bigger system, because it's a very large and very complex system, and we observe effects that only appear at large scale. For example, emergent phenomena such as one type of content and not another type of content, which is a function of behavior of many people at the same time. So it's these questions of scale and coordination which are the main challenge, and where exactly in this spectrum should moderation occur? Is it on the individual post? Of course, if you post some kind of odious content, it should be removed. But what about larger operations? For example, coordinated sharing, networks of coordinated people, coordinated pages. All this kind of stuff is very, very important. And in my observation, this is where most of the harm comes from, because a lot of inauthentic actors have basically figured out how to game the system and how to produce their desired effects using these platforms. So this is the main challenge for me.
Thank you, by the way, for emphasizing some of the aspects of content moderation regarding not only content but behavior that we will stress in this conversation, because this is part of the challenge, in fact. To Maria, and probably after that, Jacob, you could address this question to Facebook and other platforms with similar design and functionality are called social media. And many people, users, are confused when hear the word media, and mistaken about the regulation on Facebook compared to other print and broadcast media, to legacy media. At the same time, Facebook stresses many times that it is not media and it's not publisher. Please, why Facebook is not media, and why we are talking about moderation and not about editing of content?
Okay, thank you, Iglika. I do believe that this is like really essential topic, and probably the most important questions, because it's a starting point of any discussion on this topic. Actually, I don't believe that there is a simple answer to that, but I will try to be more specific when I'm talking about the European level. Like in the European law, we could say that online platforms are seen as service providers in information society, and also we can see that they're perceived as an online intermediaries, and also there is something really important till now. We see them as something like an unbiased infrastructure, which is not exactly the case. According to Article 15 of the e-commerce directive, we know that the online platforms are not responsible for the content that they're hosting if they're not unaware about the illegal nature of the content. And there is something really interesting in the European legislation here, that the platform should act like really fast, but we don't know what this really fast means exactly, to remove content or to just stop the access to it. So in this sense, we see that in the European level, we have, it's not only in the European, actually I believe that this is in the UK and in the USA also, we have these so-called safe harbors regarding the online platform. And I do believe this is it because this directive was made like 2000, it's from 2001. And in this directive, the idea is that the online platforms are
Passive.
passive, but also they are only responsible for the technical part of the process, which is not exactly the case, and this is where the moderation is coming. And because I'm coming from the academia, I can't miss to mention Marshall McLuhan, and I will quote him like the medium is the message, and why this is really important for, I do believe, for our discussion today, because he's pointing out that if we don't understand the medium, it's impossible to understand the message. And this is why I believe that it's really important to understand how the social media are working to be possible for us to define them. And yes, to your answer, I will try to answer here your question. Sorry for taking so long. It's that, yeah, I don't believe that social media are traditional medias, and they are not. And there is a reason, but we should go to the primary reason why we regulated print media or broadcasted media. This is because they're important for the public. They're important for shaping our views. And I do believe that in the digital age, and like we're living in a time where the majority of people are on social media. They're informing in social media. So yes, the social media and the platforms are really important for the way we're perceiving our surrounding, our environment, and they're important for our even for trying to defend our public interests. So I do believe that we probably all know the phrase from the uncle of Spider-Man is saying that with the great power comes the great responsibility.
Yeah.
And I do believe that for now, we see that the big platforms especially have the great power, but the great responsibility are probably not there yet. And this is it, not only it's a really difficult question to deal with, and it's not only a problem of the platforms, it's a problem to the governments, to the citizens, and also all the people that are contributing and creating content. So pretty much this is my answer.
Thank you. You bridged to media literacy that we will try to frame this conversation too. But Jacob, what would you add to this understanding, this dual nature now of platforms that are social media but not media, not publisher?
Right. So the basic answer and the real answer is that we are not a publisher because we do not create content. I do not wake up in the morning, or Zug doesn't wake up in the morning, or my colleagues don't wake up in the morning writing articles. This is not how it works. Really, our intention is to connect people and to bring them to the content that is interesting and important to them. What is important though in this debate is, of course, there is a kind of the regulation aspect is absolutely key. And as you said, it's been already like years that we have the e-commerce directive and the intermediary liability regime that makes us responsible for removing content that is illegal and that has been reported to us. And this is something that does exist, and that actually has been confirmed with the DSA. With the DSA, we will remain with a kind of a similar framework. The big difference being, and I really think that this is crucial, that we will be required to be much more transparent. And this is a journey, but I think that on transparency and on many, many aspects, we are really an industry leaders. Being more transparent, but also empowering the users more for them to see what they want to see. And on that, I will give you a very concrete example of a kind of new tools that we have in our newsfeed. Like before with the newsfeed, you had your newsfeed. Now you can choose about whether you want to have your newsfeed, about whether you have to look at your favorite pages, about whether you have to look at the pages of your friends. And this is how, and again, it's a journey, and we can always discuss about whether it's too much, it's enough, or whatever. But this kind of journey towards more transparency and more empowerment of the users is, I believe, something that is extremely important within the regulatory frameworks that are now being developed at European level, and that we believe are super important, because we fully understand the kind of the power that we have, and therefore our responsibility. And to that, like, we are super humble. We know that from many aspects, this is not a battle, and misinformation is a good example here. This is not a battle that we will win on our own. We know that this is not a battle where there is a silver bullet solution. But yes, we can. We really should adapt both our discussions and the regulatory frameworks to what this really is, and not try to copy-paste regulations from kind of other industries.
Thank you. Thank you for this answer. And we are moving now a little bit closer to media, in the other understanding of media, because there is this special relationship between media and social media and the platform and users. Because, in fact, yes, the content is user-generated, but media are also users. In Facebook, and a lot of content is originally coming from blogs, from media outlets. And when faced with negative consequences of piece of content, such as mis and disinformation, how do you think we should allocate responsibility and outline actions to curb it, to curb disinformation, to curb this harmful content? Probably to Nikola, because he's also representative of Factcheck Bulgaria. So the effort is put on disinformation, mainly coming from digital media outlets, spreads organically, but also in an organized, coordinated way. So where is the responsibility in this case?
I don't know if I can speak about responsibility per se, but I can speak on how the system is built right now. All of the media outlets, both legitimate, if we can say, and we call them mushroom sites, like these websites that appear out of nowhere and start spreading some kind of content, be it disinformation or legitimate content or just ads or clickbait stuff. There are hundreds and hundreds of these. And most of these media outlets they have one goal. It is to be shared on social media. So we are observing it's a very integrated ecosystem with social media in the center. In Bulgaria, and it's quite unique on the global scale. In Bulgaria, Facebook is we can say it's the only social media that matters. In most countries, there is competition. Some people are on Twitter, some people are on Facebook, some people are on other platforms. Here in Bulgaria, Facebook is by far the most dominant media for communication and for content distribution. And so, yes, we are observing how this works and the different kinds of strategies that people have in order to distribute their content and to reach as many people as possible. And again, the drum that I'm beating is the drum of inauthentic coordinated behavior, because basically if somebody has enough resources and has enough smarts and has one goal to show his content on a largest number of screens, we see different strategies that people manage to achieve their goal. When I open my phone, I have very dubious content that the platform says that's recommended for me. For example, this is the fruits of somebody's effort to make this, to boost inauthentically this kind of content. So yeah, I don't know about the responsibility. I know about how it works.
And Facebook, Meta, in fact, is among the platforms that has specific policy on authentic coordinated behavior. Jacob, how are different types of content moderated misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, illegal or not, and political speech?
Right. So, and this is really a crucial kind of question, because it's really, when we talk about content management, as I already said, it's really important to differentiate the different kind of content we're talking about. First, you have the content that is illegal, and this content obviously should not be on our platform and in line with the e-commerce directive and in line with the DSA. As soon as it's being reported to us, this is a content that should be taken down or geo-blocked. That's illegal content. That's rather straightforward. Of course, sometimes we can agree on whether it is illegal or not, but as soon as there is a court order, it becomes illegal and basta. That's one thing. Second thing, you have the harmful content. So all the kind of content that is legal, but that we still do not want to have on our platform. Hate speech, bullying, pornography, you name it. Like the kind of content that we as a platform have decided is harmful for our users. And as we want our users to remain safe on our platform, we remove this kind of content. Now, how it works? Actually, it's a mix of reporting. So users reporting stuff, and then we analyze the content, and we check about whether it is indeed in breach of our community standards or not, and of kind of proactive AI, where we search proactively for harmful content that we believe should not be on the platform. Then, of course, the enforcement is super important, as you can have the best policies in the world. If you don't enforce them properly, it doesn't work. And on that, I really want to emphasize, like, as I said, we have like 15,000 reviewers. To that, we have really increasingly powerful AI tools. But really on enforcement, it is also important to understand that all our reviewers are super properly trained, that it's not like they're trained one time. The kind of retrainings are ongoing. There are ongoing audits of the different teams to check in the different languages, in the different regions, about whether the quality remains in the level where it should be. So this is about the harmful content. And then we're going into misinformation and disinformation. So just to make it super clear, misinformation is just content that is assessed, possibly not true. And I'll come back to that. Disinformation is not about the content, it's about the behavior. Disinformation is about people who want to use our tools in a bad way to mislead our users. And this is where we do take action to find these groups and to remove the fake accounts or whatever we have to remove to indeed avoid our users to be misled by these guys. Unfortunately, the reality of a human being is that in whatever tool you create, you will always have kind of bad guys who will try to mislead the tool for their own purposes. And our role, and here, like at some point Zuckerberg said, we are in the middle of an arms race. And this is true. Our role is to find the bad guys to the extent possible in a proactive way and to avoid them from misleading our users. And to that, we do have dedicated teams. We also, and I want to insist on that, we also approach it in a super transparent way. We do have regular reports on our CIB operations and not the networks that have been reported. This is also something on which we do kind of cooperate with entities on the ground. Because the reality is that sometimes our teams don't see anything, like sometimes our teams don't have the full picture, and then it kind of goes both ways with regards to the exchange of information. So this is also something that does exist. So that's about CIB. Now, CIB and disinformation. Now about misinformation. I guess that the starting point of our way of thinking is that it's not up to Meta, like a private American company, to decide what is true or what is not true. And I think that we'll all agree on that. That being said, I mean, we fully understand like our responsibility and all the challenges related to misinformation. And hence our approach is to enter into partnerships with local fact checkers that will kind of do the job I will enter into more details about what I mean when I say do the jobs. Now, do the job. Now, before that, it is extremely important for us to kind of choose the partners properly, because it is a it's a huge responsibility to fact check in a country on Facebook about what is or what is not true. And this is why we do enter into partnership only with entities who have this ISCN certificate, which is a kind of an international fact checker certificate that gives us the that makes us sure enough that the partner that we will partner with indeed has the resources, the knowledge, the know-how to do the work properly. And I think that you guys just had this this certificate, by the way. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
For the time being, in Bulgaria, we've been partnering with the local office of Agence France Presse, but maybe in the future we'll have the opportunity to work together too. So that's how we use the fact checker. Now, what is it that the fact checker does really on our platform? First of all, it is the fact checker that will decide what content will be fact checked, right? Of course, we send them some signals and some list of content that we may assess that may be based on our signal as fact, but it is the fact checker that decides what content they will fact check. And then they do the assessment. And if they decide that a content is or should be indeed assessed as fake news, then first of all, it is clearly labeled on the platform that the content is fake. Then, most importantly, it is downrated in the newsfeed to up to 80% for our users not to have access or have a much lower access to that content. And we also inform the users that still want to share the content, like, guys, are you sure you want to share it? This has been assessed as fact check. And this assessment is not only an assessment, there's really a whole article being done by the fact checker about why it's being assessed as fact check, as fake news. And it is really an important aspect, because I do believe that just telling people this is true, this is not true, it doesn't work. We really have to, I mean, the education aspect is absolutely crucial in this battle. And it's like with the policies, with all the tools that we have, if we don't have at some point literacy and education, if we don't inspire our users to kind of, each of us become some sort of fact checkers and have this reflex of checking like the main things about the things that they read, I'm afraid that this battle won't be won. And that's why I'm super happy we had this partnership together and made this campaign about media literacy in Bulgaria a few weeks ago, actually. So yeah, that's really about the different kind of contents. And as you can see, the approach is also extremely different.
Thank you for elaborating on this, and some of the questions that I would ask, I think, are already addressed, but because we are circling around content and behavior and actors, there is this framework of transatlantic working group, that is ABC framework of actors, behavior and content. And from what we understand here, content, especially if suppressed, if it's removed, if it's blocked, or the visibility is lower, this is related to the intent, so it's related to the behavior. But here we have also actors, bad actors. And some of the voices and the worries in our society are related to people that are blocked for some reason. They're mainly indeed bad actors that are spreading disinformation intentionally to mislead the public. But there are people that are also blocked, or their content is taken down for different reasons. And this is mainly the way that is used in a bad faith, the system, the flagging system of the platform. What would you provide as an insight to this, how this issue is addressed by the company, this misuse of the system, the flagging system, because you've mentioned how fact-checking organization is really important for taking these decisions. But of course, there are always gray zone or just false negatives, and there are people that are flagged in organized and coordinated way. And here, Nikola probably will also add something to that.
I'd also like to add
And I will be really happy, of course, Peter, to express some opinion on that. Probably with you. We'll start with you on that.
Oh, I get to go first?
Okay.
Oh, I'm flattered. So I just wanted to add that I know that there are people here today who have been subject to attempted deplatformings or attacks by people attempting to weaponize the community standards of social media against them. And I know that a lot of you have reached out to the embassy through the team, some of whom are here today. And I want to say that we're grateful that you've reached out to us as a point of contact on this, and we remain actively engaged in working with Facebook, who have been very receptive to this conversation that we've been having. But the embassy is very concerned about this because so much of the important sort of Bulgarian national conversation takes place on Facebook. And I wanted to underscore how concerned we are and how engaged we are in working with you and Facebook and fact-checking partners like AFP and hopefully someday you to address these issues as they come up. There's no magic wand, I don't think, unfortunately. There will always be bad actors attempting to abuse any community standards or any code of conduct on social media platforms. But we're not going to give up, and we're going to keep this conversation moving forward with our colleagues at Meta.
Thank you, Peter. What would you add to that question of not only removing content but blocking users? And probably here we could add that what do you think, what is the way for the users that agree consent with the community standards to use the services, to understand better the policies and what is allowed, what is not allowed, and why their content is taken down, for example?
So first of all, I really think that our community standards, coming back to what is allowed and what is not allowed, are already pretty detailed. And to some extent, I guess, who in this room already read our community standards from A to Z? Okay, that's still not bad. That's still not bad. I guess that like 99% of our users never read this, right?
Yeah.
And here we're back, and this is for us, this is a challenge, because on the one hand, we will have stakeholders saying, yeah, but you should be more precise. So we will put our community standards the more detailed way, but then no one will read it. And still, I believe it's our responsibility to, then therefore maybe make campaigns, education campaigns for people to be at least empowered and at least inspired to go there and to better understand about our community standards and also about how we operate with regards to blocked profiles or pages. I mean, it is clearly said that if in a repeated way someone goes against our community standards several times, then we do have the right to block this page. It is clearly said that if someone is using a Facebook with a kind of a fake account, then we do have the right to block this page. So it's not like we're trying to take someone without explaining the things. That being said, as we're talking about blocked accounts, it is also a reality that we are not perfect in our enforcement, and we do mistakes. It does happen, and hence, and we're back to DSA here. We do have appeal channels in line with the regulations that will come. These appeal channels. We will have more restrictions with regard to these appeal channels, and this is also something that is super important to us. But with regards to our community standards, I really think that there is a lot already there said. Then maybe there needs to be more kind of inspiration of the users to really discover the community standards and better understand what is and what is not allowed on Facebook.
Exactly, thank you. And Nikola, because I even saw that you expressed a will to address this question of gaming the systems, because to a huge extent, what is taken down and perceived as as contra community standards content against the standards, it's removed thanks to flagging, thanks to using signals, and in automatic way. Some of the judgment is done by algorithms. What would you? How would you explain that, and what is your understanding of how this could be improved?
So that's quite a challenging question. So first of all, the flagging system, as both Peter and Jakub said, it can be gamed and can be weaponized and used for malicious purposes. I have observed many such efforts for deplatforming and for using the system in such a way where the intent is, let's find some bullet point in the community standards that can help us to flag this particular person because we don't like his behavior on Facebook. And this takes place in both parts of the spectrum. If we take the actual pro-Russia, pro-West camps, both camps engage very heavily in this kind of activity. And so this is something that's clearly problematic because we can see that finally the community standards don't work they're not being used in an honest way, let's say. If somebody, for example, is, let's say, swearing or is being a little bit more obnoxious, it can be used to take him down. Or if he posts, I have an example for a famous Bulgarian journalist who put a photo that she had taken 10 years ago of somebody's legs, and behind on the calves, this person had the Bulgarian Tsar and Adolf Hitler tattooed. So this is clearly, she's not promoting far-right ideology. It's clear, and this was the reason that the post was taken down, and then she was demoted for a week or something. So this is one part which is it's a challenge. I don't know how to address this. I think there are many smarter people than me that are working on how to address this, but it's something that should be put on the table. Yes, I forgot the other. There was another aspect about the.
Probably I will, the mic will stay in you because we are now talking about some coordinated efforts.
Well, it's clear, in terms of coordinated efforts, it's clear that there is a group of people that has read from A to Z the Facebook Community Standard Guidelines.
If probably you could address the question, and I didn't mention that, but you are open to ask questions among each other and do comments on what is already said. But I just wanted to add that this is part of the coordinated effort, but you have more perspective on other ways that behavior is coordinated, or just information campaigns or disinformation. Campaigns
I remembered on the removal and moderation side, what I want to mention, that I have observation, most of you know that there were several high-profile cases in Bulgaria, and here there is a clear problem of transparency, so I'll humbly disagree. There's a clear problem of transparency in some very high-profile cases where people were taken down, and the reason that they were taken down was never made public, and so this naturally brings a lot of speculation. So there's this whole efforts trying to paint the whole moderating system as if it's part of the. I'll be very extreme. It's part of the GRU sphere of influence. It's infiltrated by Russian agents and all this. So this might be some part of truth there, might not be, we don't know. And in my honest opinion, the problem, this comes from lack of communication on several cases which are very high profile. Here, lack of any communication from Meta on the exact reasons why this happened, and it gives field for such speculation. And this is something that I think you guys with little effort can rectify, let's say. I can give one example is the Atlantic Club page in Bulgaria, which the Atlantic Club is like it's the most Western organization possible, which was taken down, and according to them, it was taken down because they have an anti-Russian stance. I do not believe that it's only this, but nobody knows. So This is clearly something that should be communicated better in the future.
I guess it's a fair point that, like, you know, our communication is not always 100% right. And as I said, transparency is a journey, and we are on the journey, but we didn't arrive. That's clearly the case. That being said, it is also, I mean, the reality is that we cannot be too transparent in communicating our community standards, because if we were, then people would find ways to kind of bypass them. That's also part of the game, unfortunately. And so this is also something that we do have to take into account in the way we communicate about these specific cases.
It's always a balancing act, all of this. And to you, Peter, thinking about different kind of information, and probably somehow with a little bit of American perspective on that, different levels of the boundaries of freedom of expression that we see and understand as broader and larger in the United States. To you, what kind of information is most harmful for democracy, for democratical processes, for the fabric of the society?
Mm-hmm. So from the embassy perspective, what we are most engaged in countering is disinformation that seeks to divide, which I think has been very successful, not just here in Bulgaria, but in the United States and globally as well. And that is a major intent of malign actors in the sort of social media and traditional media space, is the attempt to increase the divisions in democratic and Western societies for their own purposes. The other is the attempt to decrease faith in institutions, and not just government institutions, but institutions on which traditionally society can rely, like the media. And I think that, unfortunately, the sort of fire hose of disinformation has been very effective in decreasing faith in institutions. Look at the recent great example of the COVID pandemic. There was a massive disinformation campaign about COVID vaccines, the efficacy of vaccinations, and as a result, you saw those societies that are very divided and have very low faith in government institutions have very high rates of COVID infections and very low rates of COVID vaccinations. So I think those are two of many lines of effort, obviously, but those are the two that I think that we should all be the most concerned about, because they take advantage of sort of underlying vulnerabilities to disinformation that are present in many of our societies, including the United States to a great extent. And those are the two most sort of, I think, dangerous lines of effort of the disinformation actors that we're talking about today.
Thank you so much for that. And looking at the American context and to bring it to ours, even if they are so different, is that different motivations for regulatory measures for content moderation in the United States to remove more content or to remove less content. And probably this is something as a challenge for the company, for Meta as a whole, not only in the American context. Where is the balance? And let's imagine, because there are enough authoritarian human rights pressing regimes, governments, that expect from and require demands from platforms to silence critical voices, to take content down of people that are dissidents or activists. And let's imagine a hypothetical situation that, because we have these constant parliamentary elections in Bulgaria, let's imagine a future, a dystopian one, that we have such a government, and this government wants from the platform to remove critical content. How would and how is the platform Meta addressing this? Different regimes. You have democracies, but you also you operate in many of the markets that are under authoritarian regimes.
Yeah, so two things to that. The first thing is the reality is that in some countries we are mainly accused of removing too much, and in some other countries we are mainly accused of not removing enough.
Yeah.
Which sometimes makes me thinking that we are in the right position, but that's another story. But to your point, we do have a very important human rights team that does assess about whether some content takedown requests, even if legally justified in a country, is in line or not in line with human rights. And this is something that we definitely take into account when taking decisions. And I guess it's fair to say that we don't necessarily approach takedown requests from democratic countries than from clearly non-democratic countries. That's part of our assessing process.
Great. Thank you to that. And because many of the efforts are really a result of the responsibility of the company, not the liability in the judicial sense, there are instruments in the European level, these codes of conduct, code of practice against illegal hate speech and disinformation. In your opinion, Maria, and probably you could also elaborate on that, how feasible and how efficient are still these instruments, self-regulatory instruments with their positive sides, that there are reports, monitoring reports, that companies that are sites of this conduct, these codes, are publishing in a regular manner. Do you think that this approach, mainly safe-regulatory, is still efficient, and how it will change? How do you see it?
Okay. I think that in the European Union we're trying to find a quite complex way of dealing with things, and from my perspective it will be really interesting to see how you are seeing. Is it possible to implement everything that it's included in the DSA in a way that is going to be good for establishing a balance between fighting disinformation and freedom of expression from one side? And also I just want to mention just some of the instruments that we have in the European level, like the Code of Practice. I read them all, your reports on Facebook, and Bulgaria, there is not like a really, there is some countries that are mentioned, different projects that you're making there, like some data, but for countries like Bulgaria, we are basically more or less missing. And I wanted to ask you in this regard, do you have a possibility to give more data, even to, I don't know, for the country, because it's really important to work on the specific cases in Bulgaria, because as already Peter said, here in Bulgaria we have like a really low trust in media, but like in average in Europe we have a good perception of the news that are coming from social media, which is like something that we have only here in Poland. It is really a specific case. So I want to ask you, do you if I could ask, actually.
Yeah.
Do you take into account this local context and how you communicate it, not only with civil societies, but also with the government? Is there a communication? So I know that the communication with our governments, that is changing quite a lot these days. It's quite difficult, but still.
Okay, a few things. First of all, at European level, we have different kind of regulations for different kind of contents. Again, let's not mix. DSA is really not necessarily about misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah.
DSA is mainly about illegal content, a bit about harmful content, but this is not the tool that will really solve the issues with regards to misinformation and disinformation. Let's make it super clear. For misinformation and disinformation, we do have the code of conduct. We signed the second kind of version of the code a few months ago. We were already the signatories of the first version in 2018, and I guess that this is really our commitment to fight with this problem in a way, I mean, hand in hand with other stakeholders. I guess that the main message with regards to the code of conduct on misinformation is that this is not something that the platforms will kind of find a solution on their own. This is not something that the European Commission will find a solution on its own. This is not something on which academics or NGOs will find. It's really by working hand in hand that we will be more kind of powerful. Now, with regards to the tools, again, it's about dealing with like more transparency on the one hand and trying to empower the users to the extent possible. But it's all related to, with regards to misinformation, it's all related really to a large extent to education. It's but it's important really not to mix the different kind of regulations and the different kind of content again. Now for data. Well, please do not expect me to share some data with you right now. That being said, I mean, we do have all sorts of programs with academics, especially. Let's talk about what kind of cooperation can exist. We do work with universities all around the world, so this is something that that we definitely can discuss about, and for the way we communicate with regulators and administrations. Of course, there are streams. Of course, there are communication streams, especially in crisis times. We really want to, and the war in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine is a good example where I think it was of key importance for us to also take our responsibilities from this perspective and keep our users safe and well informed to the extent possible. And again, it's not something that we do on our own. It's something that we can do working with others, including administrations.
Indeed, and cooperation with academia, more openness and transparency is in fact something that will probably mitigate some of the worries in the society. But because you've mentioned the war that created the next wave of crisis for all of us, for society, also for the platform. And there was this shift of understanding of responsibility regarding the content and content moderation. People started demanding from media, for example, that is publishing own content via social media, distributing content, to moderate their comment sections. And during this time, many of the organizations of the civic society, and we have many representatives here, I think this question is important to them. We know from our own experience that we are occasionally targeted and under continuous attacks from especially this one dealing with human rights, for example. We have a fresh example in the Media Literacy Coalition Facebook page with a recent post that somehow magnetized a lot of negative and negative comments against the organization and our goals. What is, in your opinion, the good balance here? Because the content moderation, what I'm trying to say, is not only responsibility of the platform, but also of the users and media. And I wanted to ask to you, how do you see the role of media or non-governmental organization to moderate its own comment sections? Is this part of the picture?
No, I mean,
of
course it may be, and we have tools to do that, and it may be part of the solution, but I think that when we're talking about the responsibility of the users, if in the context of kind of cooperation between media, platforms, NGOs and stuff, I think going back to education is important. And here, when I'm talking about education, it's also about creating scale in education. I mean, we've done this campaign together with you in Bulgaria. It's quite a big campaign. I still believe it's only a drop in the ocean of needs, right? And if we want to do more, I guess that we would have to do it in bigger coalitions, maybe also onboarding media, maybe doing not only online campaign, but also offline campaign, like with other media, hand in hand with other media, so that really the message on how to behave online is heard loud and clear by an as large audience as possible. But again, to that, there's really a need to have huge coalitions. We're ready to play our role in that, but we're not the only player.
Yeah, I expected from you to jump in here.
Yeah,
Peter.
I don't know if anyone's ever seen the embassy Facebook page, but we have a similar issue, to put it mildly. I think we may be unique among many people here in that we, part of my job is to moderate our comments section, and I have to do it in line with government rules that are actually very specific, which you can also read about on our Facebook page. But I will say that for us, and I think for many businesses here in Bulgaria, it's a question of capacity. I could have a person full-time just moderating our comments section some days, and it would not be enough. And I'll tell you a secret, I do not have a full-time person that can moderate our comments section on Facebook. I think you walk a fine line in moderating that, at least we walk a very fine line in moderating that, our comments section in trying to not censor differing points of view while still removing content that is quite obvious, just attempts at trolling, off topic, or outright dangerous sort of disinformation. And for us, and I think for many people in the Bulgarian social media space, you want to maintain your transparency and maintain your tolerance for the full spectrum of views. But again, we're facing a sort of onslaught, right, of people with unlimited resources and time, which we do not have. And so that represents one of actually our biggest challenges at the embassy.
And probably even we have to have another roundtable of best practices of how organizations like non-governmental or governmental or institutions, best practices on how we moderate for ourselves following transparently written rules. And this could be probably beneficial for a method to like sandboxes of different levels on the level of organization, on the level of the country, especially small countries like ours. But I wanted to probably ask the audience how they think. Do we have to moderate, like non-governmental organizations and media, do we have to moderate our content? You can express your opinion with a hand, for example, if you to vote somehow. Do you think that we have to moderate content on our Facebook pages? How do you think? You could just show with your hand. No, just like, yeah, I do. Yeah, moderating on pages. Do you agree with that? Because, for example, Bulgarian National Radio, under the demand of under the demand of the audience, in fact, started moderating its content some months after the beginning of the war in Ukraine. But this is a huge question, especially for human rights organizations, because we are indeed trying to balance freedom of expression with removing harmful content. Yes, please.
So I have a question. My name is Lyubot Alamanov, and I'm from the Center for Analysis and Crisis Communications. In the spring, we made a small campaign against trolls and fake accounts and so on. And we turned to several media with the idea, stop for one day all the comments below your posts in your Facebook pages. So just to see how the trolls are going to be silenced, and then to hear our thoughts and so on. And at the end of the day, a lot of media responded to this. They stopped the comments and so on. And when we asked them, why are you not blocking the fake accounts, the trolls and so on, almost all media said that if they do this, the algorithm is downgrading their posts. So the algorithm is punishing them for moderating insults, abuses, death threats, and so on. And this is not only one media. I'm talking about the 3 big TV stations in Bulgaria, several more TV stations, a lot of online media, probably 60% of the media presence in Bulgaria, we got almost one and the same answers. If we block, if we moderate very hard these trolls, then we are being downgraded in showing our posts and so on.
Yeah, and same goes if you turn off the comments altogether. You forego a lot of reach and a lot of attention just by the fact that you don't let people fight under your post.
So I don't want to comment on this specific case because I don't know it, but I want to make it super clear that to no extent it is in our intention to, like, you know, spread or have algorithms that would make negative content higher in the newsfeed and more. It's like, and it really, if you think about it, it goes really against our business model. I mean, at the end of the day, our business model is for people to pay ads to be present on the platform. And I can tell you that when we talk about our main clients, they do not want to be next to misinformation, disinformation, or negative content. They do not want it. So this kind of narrative or myth saying that it is in our interest to have all this kind of negative content on the platform is just not true. And again, it's common sense that it's against our kind of business goals and objectives.
Dimi wants to add something to that. Would you please introduce yourself?
So hi, I'm Dimi from Wikimedia, the organization behind Wikipedia and its sister projects. So I understand that, well, your business model and your algorithms are built in a way that they promote reaction. So the more likely people are to react to something, the more likely it is to be visible to many more people. And this is exactly what disinformation campaigns basically work off. And yes, misinformation is a very human thing. We are more likely to react to extraordinary, unbelievable stories. This you can't do anything about. But disinformation campaigns are quite organized. They happen along a specific pattern. In Bulgaria, for instance, what I'm seeing a lot is that usually China Radio International and some Russian outlet publish some story about how poor people are in the US and how they can't afford heating. Then we see very similar articles, but a bit more exaggerated, appearing on basically dozens and hundreds of mushroom sites that then disappear. And then many accounts start sharing them. And I am really very, very pro-European. So, you know, there is no reason, normal reason for the Facebook's algorithm and Facebook's business model to promote these things. To me, I see them all the freaking time on my feed. So my question here is, because you said you're super transparent, I think for algorithms and for machine learning systems, they're not at the level that they can recognize such patterns yet. But for humans, it is incredibly easy, especially in a small community and a small language like Bulgaria, to recognize these patterns and take action. You have a Bulgarian content moderation team, I assume. Mm-hmm. Within this team, is there a specific task force currently that is working on Russian disinformation? Are there people who are really focused only on Russian disinformation to take quick action? Thank you.
So, as I said, we do have a team that is working on disinformation, on CIBs, and this is really a team of like the best experts in the world. This is not a team that is working specifically on Bulgaria, but if you go on their reports, you can see that quite some of the networks that they remove are to some extent Russia related. Again, it's all shown in the reports. So obviously everything that comes from the country that you mentioned is also on our radar. It's not the only source of disinformation, but it is. Now, that being said, about what you're talking about, I guess the reason why we're here today is to some extent for me to maybe discuss with you and better explain how we operate. But it kind of goes both ways, and it is really important for us, and we have our public policy manager for Bulgaria here, that if there are like huge things that we don't see, well, we'd be delighted to enter into some sort of, you know, contact and then it's our duty to go to the CIB team and say, guys, maybe here in Bulgaria, despite the fact that you guys are great, maybe here in Bulgaria there's something you didn't see. Up to you to assess. So it really kind of goes both ways, and that's also why we're having this discussion.
Yes, no. Just to introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
My name is Neno Nenov, and I work as a policy advisor to a member of the European Parliament, Eva Maidel. And we had a nice event with Meta and Google representatives
with
in
Johannes.
June on the same
Absolutely
on the same topic. So first, it's admirable that Meta is so often on ground in Bulgaria. I hope that this tradition increase, because this helps to the transparency and trust much more than your community standards. But this is really admirable practice, and it's something to be appreciated. Just a topic, I had two questions, but one of them was already touched upon. First was the official contact with governments, authorities. Because from my personal experience from the European Parliament, Meta is very good at contacting and engaging with policymakers in Brussels who are dealing with regulation like the DMA, DSA, AI Act, etc. Many of these our team and my boss is working on. So you're very good at this. Probably not so good in getting in touch with authorities. I speak here only knowing the Bulgarian cases, several governments. I'm not only talking about one single individual case, and ministries actually, because there are several ministries who are interested in getting in touch with the platforms, not just the for instance, the Ministry of Defense is some that I'm not sure that platforms have thought about so often. So just something like an advice, get your streams of contacts, which you mentioned that you have, and I believe you have, much more efficient, at least with countries like Bulgaria. It's in mutual interest. This is just a slight comment. And a specific question more on the specific topic of today's event, the content moderation in Bulgaria. As you mentioned, you've been working with Agence France Press, yes. Okay, it's one content moderation. Let's assume that before Factcheck BG got their verification by the IFCN, there has been none other verified fact checkers in Bulgaria. I don't know. I just assume. I really don't know, but this is the only logical reason that I can think of, that you work with only one institution. So if there was only one, then have you made any efforts to increase at least their capacity of the people, resources who are engaged in helping Meta, because they have their other businesses, of course, like a media outlet. Because, okay, political instability is something that Meta shouldn't care. You're not like a political organization, but in countries which are very close to the war zone, in countries who are in a constant political instability and like disinformation is flourishing, probably a little bit more resources and capacity, increased capacity during specific times, for instance, like the current election campaign, and this has been taking place every 3 months in Bulgaria for the past 2 years, probably will take place several other times in future, in soon time. So is there any mechanisms that during, for instance, election campaigns or turmoils or social, let's say turmoil, something like this, Meta is increasing their capacities and resources in moderating or monitoring disinformation, probably temporary? And a very last question about how you select your content moderation partners. Do you proactively place something like, I don't know, an advert or a call for verified fact-checking organizations, or you wait for organizations, for instance, like Factcheck BG, they get verified and they get in contact with you asking you if you can work together? Because, you know, only one partner can be very biased. I'm not saying that this is the case in Bulgaria, but one partner is usually risky. Thank you very much, and sorry for the long intervention.
Thank you for the questions.
There was a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So if I miss, I tried. If I miss some, please come back to me. So first of all, thank you for the warm words, and it's indeed important for us to be as much as possible present on the ground to discuss with the local stakeholders and communities. With regards to engaging with the local administration, well, I guess it's not a secret that we will have now a meeting with our, with your at interim minister of digital affairs, and yeah, I mean, this is something that that we try to do, more and more. We do now have for a few months now a public policy manager that is working specifically on Bulgaria. I mean, among a few other countries, but that is working specifically on Bulgaria. And if you do see administrations that want to meet with us, Whitney is over there, and I think it's really the best contact point for contacts with administrations. Now, with regards to capacity in kind of stress times, I would say, or stress test times. First of all, with regards to the war in Ukraine, the first important thing to say is that we have increased the capacity of our fact-checking programs in Russian and in Ukraine in the whole region since the war started. And this is something that I guess we will continue be doing. And also in the whole region, whereas we had like 16 fact-checkers 1 year ago, today we have over 20 already. And I do expect and I do hope that this amount of fact-checkers will indeed increase, with new organization having the right kind of documents to be onboarded. I do expect, hope that next year there will be more of these. So again, this is a path, and the figures show that we are having more and more of these. Now, with regards to the elections, of course that elections are like fully mapped, and we have in the kind of back office what we call XFN teams. So it's really teams of different kind of sub-teams. You have legal, you have people like me, you have people working on misinformation, disinformation, content, whatever, and they really focus on everything that they should focus on for the elections in Bulgaria to be like clear on our platform and to ensure the transparency of the elections. And you know, more broadly speaking, we have nowadays, I think 40,000 people working on safety and trust with Meta, which is like, I think 4 times more than in 16. Only last year, we've invested $5 billion on safety and trust on our platform. So again, are we perfect? No, we're not. Are we an industry leader? Well, I think we are. I think we are, and I think that our efforts are really clear. Again, more can be done, yeah, but really the efforts are here. But coming back to the elections, yes, we do have specific teams working on the elections. Yes, we are in contact with authorities to allow for the elections to be, again, clear on our platform. And yes, we're open to partnership with NGOs. Again, I think, like, you know, not fact-checking, but media literacy campaigns in the context of the elections is also something that is extremely important, and that would maybe be interesting to do.
In fact, I will jump in here just for a second and go back to you with your questions, because this was meant to be like a wrap-up to our discussion here. It was about especially evolving concept of media literacy and how you see what knowledge, understanding, and skills are required and needed for users to better comprehend how content moderation works, and to create this ethics in users to read community standards, to understand them better, to be more responsible. So the knowledge, the understanding, the skills, what they are, in your opinion, and they are, in fact, media literacy in Bulgaria is part of the civic education, and how Meta could be part of this, creating resources, incentives for different organizations to train teachers, to train people, young and elderly, on that.
I think that working at scale is really the main answer here, because the resources, they do more or less exist. We can fine-tune them, we can make them a bit more local, but the resource, they exist. Yeah. The question is how really to reach to the different kind of audience, because being able to efficiently reach the teachers is not the same thing than efficiently reach the kids and teenagers, which is not the same thing than efficiently reach the parents, which is not the same thing to efficiently reach the voters, right? And so these kind of strategies it is something that is to be implemented with local stakeholders, because honestly, I do not have the knowledge about how to reach parents in Sofia. I don't know, and hence partnership is extremely important. And then when we talk about elections and stuff like that, then it's really scaling and doing things in partnership with other media that I believe may be the most kind of efficient here.
Thank you for that. And probably some of you would like to add. Yeah, Dr. Galef.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Galef. I'm representing Center for the Study of Democracy, a think tank here based in Sofia, working on disinformation and Russian influence in Europe since more than 15 years. So there are two major issues, let's say, here with the content moderation based in Bulgaria. One is what already Nikola mentioned. It is about the algorithms, how they promote and are used by inauthentic coordinated behavior or groups that are using the algorithms in their benefit. And this is, let's say, a technical question. But the other question is about the content moderation that is done by persons, by individuals. And I'm not talking about fact checkers. I'm talking about the company which is subcontracted here in Bulgaria from Meta to do the content moderation. And very often there are worries and concerns that actually this content moderation, and we are not sure whether a post or account is blocked or taken down by the algorithm or by a decision of a person from these content moderators based here in Bulgaria. But there are a lot of, in last, I would say, year, there are a lot of worries and concerns and a public debate about how this company has been selected, how you enforce your own community standards on the work of this company. Whether is it possible that, let's say the personal biases of content moderators, of the persons that are doing the content moderation, influence the work of these persons. And the biggest problem is that for this issue, there is nothing as a reliable information, let's say. There are only rumors, and even some efforts of different organizations and persons to understand whether the activities taken against their post or their accounts have been a result of just a technical algorithm or have been a result of decision of a given person were not fruitful, so didn't have any results. And just to finish with an example, we are well known for distributing a lot of information about Russian influence in Europe. And I can't imagine why several of our posts that have been boosted even we do have the disclaimer for political issues, social issues, and so on, and everything verified, and so on, have been not approved, while at the same time, posts of pro-Russian groups here in Bulgaria and some parties in this including, that are literally telling lies. Like, for example, that just now Russia, an army is actually advancing in Kherson Oblast, which is just factually not true, have been allowed and approved for being boosted at the same time. So I personally think this is not algorithm. This is not result of algorithms. This is a result of decision of persons that have been moderating the content. So, what are the measures that you taken to enforce transparency and so on, and also accountability of these companies that are actually doing the content moderation?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. Well, as you can imagine, we've heard about these rumors. A few things. And here I really want to be super clear. First of all, when our content moderators have our policies, they are extremely, extremely specific, and there is no room for interpretation for them. They are written in a way that really they should follow, they ought to follow what is written, and again, interpretation, zero ground. That's one thing. Second thing, every single content moderator that we have is not only onboarded and trained when joining the teams that moderate content, but they have very regular trainings for us to be sure that they do follow our guidelines and that they do follow the way we do operate. Then within the companies, the different teams are weekly audited on the quality of their work, on, you know, randomly chosen and stuff. Then the last thing is that also the content moderator as such, the task that is assigned to him is also randomly kind of assigned, which makes it not possible for them to really go and deep dive at scale, moderate content in a biased way. So on the one hand, I really, really want to emphasize that we do have all the tools in place that allow us to be safe and confident about the quality of the content. That being said, the remark that you make indeed is interesting, because it's been quite some months that there is this rumor in Bulgaria, and maybe we should think about, you know, how to better communicate to fight the rumor. On that, I agree. That being said, on the fact-checking, really checks, on the content moderations, checks are being done internally. It is really our duty to be sure that the level of quality of moderation all around the world is the same, and on that we feel confident.
Yeah. Take the word.
Okay, my name is Ilyan Vasilyev. I used to be ambassador of Bulgaria to Russia, and then I'm running an alternative and analysis NGO foundation, fully dedicated to telling Bulgarians the intricacies of Russian policies. And I'm also a producer of Alternativa TV show program. Now, I've seen your, I have some rainy days with Facebook. 2 years ago, I was blocked. I never understand why. Lucky me, I had a friend who gave me 10 of the top down from Mark Zuckerberg email addresses, and I complained, and within 1 hour, I was released from prison. Now, with regard to transparency, first question, how transparent is an organization where you have a problem with being blocked and you don't know whom to address your complaint to? How does your review process goes? Because you were just telling us that, and I would be challenging you, because now we're at war, and Facebook is being used by Russians to, if you look at the opinion polls in Bulgaria, you would see that Bulgaria is perceived as a most pro-Russian country, but it's not because of the Bulgarians, it's because of the propaganda, and they use social media. Do you know who is best at using Facebook for promoting his party campaign? Возрождение, the most pro-Russian, anti-Western party. And I'm fully confident that whatever your AI algorithms or well-trained guys are doing, they're not doing a good job, because that is exactly what they're doing. And that's why they're proliferating the media with their total nonsense. And there's no check.
So on that, so first of all, we do have appeal channels. As I already said, the DSA will kind of increase the visibility of these appeal channels. And I fully agree with the fact that mistakes happen and appeal channels should be there. They are there. They will be better. That's one thing. Second thing, it's like with this kind of narrative, and I'm sorry to say so, of course we are an extremely important part of this whole kind of game. But I wouldn't like that people have the impression that we are the source of all evil. It is. No, but that's kind
I'm not
of
saying
where,
that.
you know.
I'm using you, and I'm a fan of Facebook, but I want to be critical just as a friend. And if you don't take this, then it's a problem.
But it is important also, again, and we're back to the education part. We're back to the part that maybe there is some literacy to be done in the societies and stuff like this. Like, we're really trying to, and we already discussed it, work on disinformation, misinformation, harmful content, illegal content on our platforms. If in some countries there is more appetite for some narratives rather than others.
No, it's not narrative. They're advertising on Facebook. That's what Razan is doing. I'm not able to boost any of my posts. That is the leftover from my being in prison. But I'm not complaining. This is the name. I do understand, guys, that you have a very tough job, because you are just as a state, a quasi-state. And we'll look what states look like. And now I can't blame you for all the deficiencies and handicaps that you have, because it's a tremendous
job. If the guy you're
job.
talking about is advertising on Facebook, and if this is misinformation, then this is content that should land in the third-party fact-checker bucket. And that's where I'm trying to tell you that the tools do exist, right? It's difficult for me today to talk on specific cases, but like if you look at this at scale, the tools do exist, and we're trying, then that's what we're doing today, to communicate as efficiently as possible about the existing tools, which, by the way, are not perfect, and hence the feedback that we also want to get.
Okay, and on the community standards. Now, I believe I know pretty well how the Russian propaganda works. And I tell you that these guys are professionals on using community standards against normal people. They excel at that. They are better than you even believe. And that's exactly what they're doing. They organize troll armies, which are absolutely weaponizing your community standards against the larger community in Facebook. And they know every single letter, every single angle, which they can use in order to... okay, I know that it's...
Back to our discussion. So should we be more transparent in our community standards?
In terms of transparency, there are end. If you ask Bulgarians using Facebook, 95% of them would tell you that, oh, I can't see how I could appeal, say, first, and then when I can appeal after I had been blocked. Transparency for me is ease of access. Okay? If you look at the Facebook page, finding the button review and appeal is not the first thing that you would easily identify and find. I mean, it's just like any commodity in this market. If you can't appeal the product instantly, on spot, then you have a problem. I do believe that you want to be more transparent. But I also do believe that for example, your relations with state authorities, or I imagine you also have some sort of relationship with secret services.
No.
You don't?
I personally don't. Yeah.
You don't know?
We do have, if on that, very clearly,
okay,
we do have specific teams that are in charge with relations with law enforcement.
Okay, fine. Okay. But just imagine a law enforcement institution in a semi-autocratic country, or with a country that is not particularly excelling, until recently hasn't been excelling, in applying democratic standards. I shall not continue, but I just tell you that I know of instances where our law enforcement organizations have been used against people in social media, using social media.
On this specific case, as I already mentioned, we do have our human rights team that really reviews it also against that to avoid these kind of things. But I mean, we could spend the whole day on specific cases.
Human rights team for Bulgarian.
Well, yeah, we do have human rights team that also review Bulgarian cases.
Kudos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably last two questions, quick one, because we need to.
Yeah,
three really quick, really well synthesized questions, please, to every one of the panelists, probably.
Thank you. Just to Mr. Turovski. My name is Aneta Stefanova. I work on Peter's team at the embassy. Hi, Peter. Could be a very simple answer. Maybe I just don't understand the procedures at Facebook. When you're talking about fact checking, working with AFP on this.
Yeah.
I know how this works. I know who works on this. Is there a reason why, if you identify a story as fake news, you just put out a warning and not take it down completely?
Yeah, it is a decision that's been taken by us on purpose because we do believe that, again, true, not true, it remains like something that is to be defined. And we do believe that if we remove it completely, well, the story will go elsewhere anyway. So we do prefer to downgrade it like up to 80% and allow our users to see it less rather than completely remove it. That being said, this is it's a fair question and something on which I understand there can be debate here.
Because obviously the contrast of actually taking down people's profiles, it's not fair. In my mind.
Well, it's not fair. If you have a profile has been taken down, it's been taken down because it's been misleading several times our community standards. That is the reason why it's being taken down. For fake news and content that has been assessed as fake news by our fact checkers, indeed the policy today is to downgrade it in the newsfeed.
Maybe something to reconsider in the future, especially given how serious AFP are in actually establishing the facts and the truth, and just continuing the spread of fake news actually is probably not fair to societies around the world. But thank you very much for the explanation.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Rusina Petrova from the Bulgarian National Radio and also a part of the fact-checking team. My question is, can the traditional medias like Bulgarian National Radio help Meta fight against fake news?
We've been talking about at-scale campaigns, and I think that such a media like the one you represent may be, to be discussed of course, but maybe precisely a good ally in making really huge campaigns, not only like on Meta, but also in other media campaigns to raise awareness of the users. So yeah, I think that there is room for cooperation here, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll add that I think that we've been very impressed at the embassy with the sort of grassroots fact-checking initiatives that have sprung up since the full-scale unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine especially, but even before here in Bulgaria. And I think that there's a lot of great work being done in that space. And the embassy has had a lot of grant opportunities and a lot of engagements on disinformation and fact-checking in particular. And we want to continue to ramp up our presence and our work with local partners like BNR to do more, because I think that's where the needle can be moved in a real way, is with credible local voices doing that good work.
Thank you for adding that, because the role of the American Embassy is important for organizational working in education, including
we do our humble best.
Yeah, and Ivailo, probably you're the one last. Ivailo Spasov from UNICEF Bulgaria.
And hi to all the panelists. Indeed, I'm representing the Bulgarian office of UNICEF, and I have a particular question. I'm not going to talk about, elections and war because most of the other members of the audience did already. But I want to mention the angle of public health when it comes to the COVID pandemic. And kudos, by the way, to Meta, who was very proactive in partnership with UNICEF, with WHO, with the big, I would say, UN agencies and other stakeholders that were promoting scientific, factual information. I've been personally involved in many campaigns throughout the last 3 years, and I know Meta was supporting that factual, scientific-based information. And yet, something went wrong. I mean, we had all the resources in place, all the fact checkers, all the science behind the vaccines, and we see in reality that for countries like Bulgaria, the processes were very politicized, very, conspiracy theories, rumors all together. And I'm saying it from purely practitioners' point of view, that we are seeing hesitancy so high that it's already affecting the vaccine coverage, for example, on other diseases like measles, polio, that we thought are already eradicated or close to eradication. And this is definitely due to a large-scale disinformation and misinformation organized campaigns that even Meta could not counter, I would say, because I don't know, they were super organized, the conspiracy theories and non-scientific rumors. And WHO, for example, has proven with reports and analyses that disinformation in the real life actually takes lives and harms the well-being of people. So my question would be, how do you assess probably your involvement in the whole pandemic content moderation aspect, if there was a content moderation aspect, particularly to the COVID-19 crisis? I don't want to talk about it in past tense because the pandemic is not over, and I'm sure, I can testify from my personal experience that Meta was doing a lot to really promote scientific information and fact-based information, and yet, for example, in Bulgaria, we never passed the 30% threshold of vaccinated people, and we are gonna see a long-term devastating consequences on the health of people when it comes to disinformation.
Well,
thank you.
I guess, thank you very much for this question. So first of all, I really think that we did and try to do our bit on COVID. What is extremely important, and also back to the former question, misinformation that can drive to physical harm to our users, which is basically COVID misinformation, is the only misinformation that we do assess as being against our community standards, and hence we remove. It's not something that we send to our third-party fact checker and that we ask them to review and then we maybe downgrade or not. Misinformation that has that can be harmful to the users is something that is removed and that we did remove. That is one thing. On the other hand, as you said, it was super important for us also to promote WHO content, UNICEF content. I mean, only a few weeks after the pandemic, we have created this information center that was on top of every newsfeed during months. So we've done our bit. Did we do enough? I don't know, maybe not. Are we like the main player to blame about how many people are vaccinated or not? Not sure, really not sure.
We have to wrap up, and if you allow me to, I would try to extract some key phrases from our conversation. First of all, this is only the beginning, I believe, of our conversations. Of course. But we all agree on these key phrases: transparency, multi-stakeholder cooperation, partnership with organizations in civic society, education, with a huge exclamation point, education, debunking, the really important work, fact-checking organization, but also, because we finish with that, pre-bunking, because this is probably the next big thing in content moderation. Thank you all for your participation, and thank you to all the members of the audience for being active, engaged,